Has there been an American offer?
No. No, I look forward to, after peace, of a period of competitive but peaceful coexistence between ourselves and the Russians in this area.
Would it be fair to say that the real obstacle to peace is a competition between the superpowers, or call it the Cold War, or the interest of the superpowers?
No, I don't think so. That really, that's another rephrasing of your other question. I know there's a great deal of difference of opinion in the West and in my country as to the Russian motive in this part of the world. Some people say that the Russians don't want peace, that they want a state of controlled tension. I doubt if that's ever been true, but even assuming that that was true at one time, I don't think it's true anymore. I think the events in this area, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, have demonstrated, both to the Russians and ourselves, that a state of controlled tension is something you simply cannot create, that you get too many risks and too many dangers involved. I don't think anybody planned the situation that happened in last September when the Syrians started moving into Jordan. But here you had a very difficult, very dangerous possibility of a confrontation. And as I say, I don't think anybody planned that, but that's the sort of thing that can happen in a state of tension. In other words, there is no such thing as controlled tension. And I think, again, the major interest of both the Soviets and ourselves is in a peace.
But even if peace was reached, there would be quite a hot competition between the superpowers in this area.
Yes, but as long as it's in the field of economics, culture, that sort of thing, I think we'd welcome that kind of competition.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the assumption that Sadat has appealed to the United States that they must use their influence now, otherwise new hostilities will take place?
Well, I think we're taking President Sadat's appeal very seriously, and we certainly intend to continue our efforts with both sides to work toward a just and lasting peace.
I think we'll stop.
I think there's one point that we should make, that nobody is asking Israel to go back to the lines of June 4, 1967, which were shaky armistice lines. We're asking Israel to go back to secure and recognize borders. Now, in the case of Egypt and the Sinai, we feel that that border runs along the line that has existed there since 1907. But it would no longer be an armistice line. It would be a recognized and secure border between two nations pledged to live at peace with each other. So it's not exactly the same as a restoration of the shaky armistice system. It's a great deal different.
Kyle, 6. Mr. Burges, how do you evaluate chances for a peaceful solution to the whole Middle Eastern problem?
Well, I remain hopeful. I think we have an opportunity presently that we haven't had in the over 20 years this crisis has continued. I think that the parties to the dispute are now being brought up against and being required to face the very fundamental issues of it. And I think we're in for a very difficult and possibly lengthy period of negotiation. But as I say, I stay hopeful. I would comment, you talked about a peaceful solution. I don't think there's any other solution possible, given the military situation in the area. I think neither side can extinguish the sovereignty of the other, and at the same time, neither side has the capability of enforcing its will on the other. So I think it has to be a peaceful solution.
But how long will it take, a guess?
Oh,
years a month?
Well, let's say, assuming that the present pace of events can be maintained, I should think that within 60, 90 days, we'd have a pretty clear picture of what the intentions of the parties are in all the aspects required to produce a settlement.
I spoke about a whole Middle Eastern problem, but still the Palestinians are negative towards a political solution. Do you think a solution could be found exclusively between Egypt and Israel, for instance?
Well, I don't think that is a very present possibility. I recall that President Sadat said to the Palestinians just a week or so ago that there was no Egyptian solution or Jordanian solution or Palestinian solution, there was an Arab solution, and I think this is true. I'm quite sure that as these negotiations intensify, that the Jordanians and the Egyptians will be marching pretty much along the same line and about the same pace. But I don't think anybody's thinking in terms of separate solutions.
What does the United States consider a just solution to the Palestinian problem?
Well, for over 20 times, we've voted for the language in Resolution 194 of the General Assembly of 1948, which gives the refugees the choice either to return, repatriation if they're willing to return to Israel and live at peace with their neighbors, or compensation and settlement elsewhere. As I say, we have supported this principle over 20 times. We feel that this is the key to the solution. We think that we need practical arrangements in carrying out these principles. We cannot support a solution that would extinguish Israel's sovereignty as a state, but I think it's not at all impossible that we can, within these principles, devise such practical arrangements whereby the refugee does have a right of option as to what he wants to do. I think the important thing is that when that time comes, that there be generous compensation available to him very quickly.
But Israel is quite hard against this resolution.
Well, this is part of the practical problem, as I said. I don't think anybody would ask a nation to accept something almost its own population quickly. That would be a direct threat to the sovereignty and independence of Israel. But I think that a phased solution involving some repatriation, a great deal of compensation, and the economic development of the whole area, I think it could be resolved in that context. Moreover, you will note that King Hussein, who really, whose government is most responsible in the Palestine issue, has expressed a readiness to, once evacuation takes place, to talk about the future role of Palestinians as such in the restored Kingdom of Jordan.
As far as can be seen from Cairo, the greatest obstacle to peace right now is the Israeli insistence not to go back to the borders before the war in '67. Could you imagine any way of getting out of this deadlock?
Oh, I think there are a number of ways. As my president said just a few days ago, we think that in some problem areas, a system of international guarantees would give the Israelis more security than a system, than a geographical acquisition of territory. But
Cairo, optagelse 7. How would you describe present relations between the United States and Egypt?
Well, I'd say it's an anomaly in a way. Officially, diplomatic relations have been severed. but we have a continuing, ongoing dialogue with Egypt, which we carry on here in Cairo, in Washington, where there is a UAR intersection, which is a counterpart of my mission here, and in New York, between our delegations. We have some very fundamental differences with the Egyptians. I would say the differences are more in the methods of arriving at a settlement than in the shape of that settlement itself, and I think my Egyptian friends would agree with me on that. Our view of a settlement between Israel and Egypt as set forth in the proposals of 1969 and that of the Egyptians is not, they're very close. But to go back to the earlier question, the Egyptians think that we should be putting all sorts of public pressure on the Israelis to bring this about. We disagree with them very fundamentally on that. But as I say, we have a very intensive dialogue going on. In other areas, we have good relations. We have 2 American oil companies in partnership with Egyptian companies developing oil in this country. Excellent, excellent relations at all levels. We have an American university which has served this country for well over 50 years, which continues with its work. So, although there are no diplomatic relations, I would say that overall our relations are pretty good.
Well, observers have been able to notice, I think, an improved state of relations. For instance, Sadat in his last speech didn't scold the Americans. These are new tones in Cairo.
Well, let's hope it continues and multiplies.
Was Nasser an obstacle to better US-Egyptian relation, or was it him who brought about what we could maybe call the change in Egyptian-US relations when he accepted the ceasefire last August?
Oh, I think I would certainly agree with the latter part of your question, that it was July, actually, the end of July, that he accepted our peace initiative, which was a very courageous, very statesmanlike act on his part. And it was that act of his that has made it possible for President Sadat and the present government to continue in his path. But it was Nasser's path. He's the one who made the first basic fundamental decision, yes.
The Russians are reportedly nervous over the latest development in the US-Egyptian relation. Reportedly, they fear that a peaceful settlement would cost them some of their influence in Cairo, or said in another way, they fear that the price Washington has asked from Egypt for assistance in obtaining a settlement with Israel is reduced